shit.
The message is clear.
But how golden can you get? Golden Debate Show, GoldenShow, @nomad.com. I feel like I'm a chair download. It's golden. You know it's golden. It's golden. It's golden. What? So fucking golden. All that. So like if I don't strip it away, ain't off good to a good show. So live from FEMA Region 1, it's the Golden Show, Golden Debate Show, @nomad.com. We get golden around here. Check out the golden cups and the golden ring.
The golden debate show. Yeah, the golden debate show. Golden show, wow. Golden debate show.
Your aura, my body and soul, aura, everything and everyone has its own electro vibration. Everything and every atom, electron, aura is a vibration. Every atom, electron, aura, it can be manipulated, and it's of magnetic and infrared energies. The aura around human is electromagnetic radiation spanning from microwave to infrared to UV light. All parts of the body heat spectrum, and is related to our conscious activities such as thinking and creativity. It has been discovered that our DNA could be enhanced, damaged, influenced, or altered by influencing its microwave aura.
The mission statement of the newly formed group,
the
United People of America, founded on the 4th of July at the Gettysburg National Military Park. President Abraham Lincoln declared in the Gettysburg Address that this nation shall have a new birth of freedom. We were a nation during that speech at the Mount Everest of division and the Grand Canyon of struggle to regain our unity. Sadly, 151 years later, remnants of that division lingers, and the struggle for full unity of the descendants of the Civil War has been defeated. When President Lincoln declared a new birth of freedom was imperative, he condemned the old paradigms as useless and lifeless. During a speech I recently gave with fear and trembling at this same Gettysburg, I spoke the birth announcement of the coming of unity among the races and people of this nation, America. While immersed in an intense 3-hour prayer session, I was led by the Lord to call for a national cessation of the use of color to identify any member of his, being God, one human race creation. His, being God, creation of one race is unmitigated, unique, sovereign, and eternally without an other. The use of color to identify a human suggests that color is superior to...
These are two different prime ministers, one from Australia, one from Canada, talking about Iraq war. It's the same speech, it's the same co-writers, it's Illuminati vampire.
In regional security, the community of nations required Iraq to surrender its offensive arsenal, its chemical and biological weapons, and abandon its nuclear weapons program. Iraq agreed to comply.
The world judged the Iraqi regime to be a dangerous aggressor. In the interests of world peace and regional security, the community of nations expelled Iraq from Kuwait, required Iraq to surrender its offensive arsenal, its chemical biological weapons, and to abandon its nuclear weapons program. Iraq agreed to comply. Iraq's continued defiance of the reality of
this is King Midas, and you're listening to the Golden Show. It's King Midas certified. Golden.
It is inherently
dangerous to allow a country such as
Iraq to retain weapons of mass destruction, particularly in the light of its past aggressive behaviour.
That's right. If the world community fails to disarm Iraq, we fear that other rogue states will be encouraged to believe that they too can have these weapons, these most deadly of weapons, to systematically defy international resolutions, and that the world will do nothing to stop them. That is the ultimate nightmare, which the world must take decisive and effective steps to prevent.
And effective steps to prevent.
Scientists discover on-off switch to a person's consciousness. An orchestra consisting of woodwind, strings, percussion, and brass instruments each work off of a score specific to the instrument they're playing. If each each contribute a layer to the overall performance that by themselves would paint only a limited picture of what the piece was meant to sound like. Imagine Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, where all you heard were the oboes playing, the conductor standing before the full written score. It's necessary to extract each nuisance from each instrument to provide the vibrant reality of the opus. The above example was one of Francis Crick, famous for being the co-discoverer of the DNA double helix along with James Watson in 1953. To use in the describing of the search of the origins of consciousness in the human brain, many different parts of the brain are required for perceiving different elements of consciousness of touch, taste, sight, hearing, and smell. However, Crick hypothesized, along with his colleague Christoph Koch of the Allen Institute of Brain Science in Seattle, we're going to have to do a little book of knowledge on the Allen Institute, that there must be one specific part of the brain that acted as the conductor, bringing all the individual elements together into one cohesion. And understanding the concept of the consciousness, 10 years after Crick died, his and Koch's hypotenuse has apparently been proven correct, with all the initial discoveries that one specific part of the brain is responsible for regulating consciousness. The discovery was made as reported by newscientist.com when scientists working with a patient suffering from severe epilepsy found that they could aversively shut off the individual's consciousness by sending an electrical impulse to the area of the brain known as the plasmastrum. I love saying words wrong, but I'll make you look at that word in a minute. The study of the different regions of the brain trying to determine specific functions has been occurring for more than a century. Scientists have been using electricity to target areas. That's pretty much like back in the day when the psychologists would shock your ass and give you like electrical lobotomies and shit. Electricity to target the areas and learn just what function a certain region was responsible for regulating. Until now, however, none once has ever been able to study to shut off a person's consciousness. The team behind the study, led by Mohammed Kazi of George Washington University in Washington, D.C., detailed how they placed one of several electrodes directly next to the classicum, which is that part of the brain, of the individual. This area has been the subject of electrical stimulation in previous studies. Prior to high-frequency electrical impulse stimulation, the patient has been engaged in the act of reading. As soon as the impulses were sent to the classicum, she stopped reading and simply stared off into space. It's pretty much not good. Fucking with your brain and your consciousness, but very interesting. Yeah, they could target different parts of your brain now. So now I do think that all this brainwashing shit might be possible.
It's definitely possible. They've been sending us signals and waves for years. Television.
Yes, sir. It is. So there was also, on the sidebar, like a little research that's kind of off of that. They showed like television subliminal messages and shit. And this is subliminal messages though. And what they showed was, if they showed you like Big Mac, Orange Crush, it didn't make you want that brand. It didn't make you specifically want a Big Mac or Orange Crush. It did make you thirsty, however, and it made you hungry. That's pretty interesting too. So it all works side by side. How your brain works is very interesting. I think it controls everything.
In California, the city of Manhattan is imposing a 60-day ban on fishing off of the pier after an incident in which you may have heard about already. A shark attacked a swimmer over the weekend.
And Shark Week's coming on TV. You don't think there's good incidents? I do. That's
these fishermen were on the end of the pier and they had hooked a shark, a baby great white shark, and they were fighting with it for about a half hour or so when some swimmers intersected with that shark on the line, and the shark ended up biting one of the swimmers in trying to protect itself. The fishermen aren't supposed to be reeling in shark. As soon as they know they have a shark, they're supposed to cut it off the line. They themselves shot the video that you're about to see, getting a kick out of what they're watching. Let's take a look. It's pretty disturbing. We'll talk about it in a moment.
Oh, there he is. Look at him. Look at him. Right. Look. Right in front of him. Dude. Look. He's right at him. Yeah. Oh, I should have recorded that shit.
I got it. Exactly.
He fucking jumped right on top of him.
He did?
Yeah, right on top of him.
Yeah.
Just turned out. He was right on top of him.
You want to keep swimming my head?
Yeah. Oh, look, he's yelling still.
Unless he got bit.
Open minds and empty ones. Go to show. Go to the beach show. What up?
Oh shit! Oh, maybe he got bit.
Well, that's not good.
Oh shit! He got bit. Nobody got bit.
No, he's
And they're gonna laugh about I punched him in the shark.
I hope he didn't get bit. No, because he's getting one of them's getting carried.
One of them's dragging him in though.
Carried.
Well, that's not good.
It's pretty astounding. You can hear the guys screaming. Now these fishermen on the wharf, you can see that they knew what was happening. They had the shark on the line for quite a while.
Goal scored today by the German squad.
G Unit.
G Unit of the soccer.
Yeah.
Damn, they crushed them, yo.
Dempsey goals out. Brazil's out. So my picks are out. Your picks are out. I don't know. I think Germany's going to win it. But Messi does have a shot.
Midas, and you're listening to
He has to get by the Dutch, though,
It's
as we're waiting to Golden Debate Show.
Orange squad.
Yeah, after I come from a commercial and now I'm talking about animals.
Yeah.
I was talking about titties and it's one before. So
the segue is very important, and also worth the price of admission is you railing on that bitch in the audience.
Oh, you had the DVD.
Yeah.
You watched
Opie and
the
Anthony,
whole DVD.
Yeah.
How was that? I didn't see the
comic.
whole
Fucking great.
Opie and Anthony get fired.
Great.
And here they got Panizzo to talk about some crazy shit about some cherry whiz.
You know, funny going after that girl.
That's on the DVD.
That was a long bit.
Oh,
but it couldn't be part of the special because it was too
brutally funny. Like, it's brutal, but it's so funny. And you get the boyfriend or the guy that she ain't fucking, whatever he is. You get him to completely take your side.
Do you understand that he tweeted me?
He did.
That guy and said,
"Thank you."
He said, "Dude, you're right about that girl."
You're absolutely right. You have a knack of looking at people in an audience because you're doing your act. I don't think people think you're paying attention to them. So when you're looking at them and you call someone out, you fucking bam, 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 and let everyone know what they're all about in one sentence.
But do you know what because it's the difference between TV, because you get a lot of people that come to a comedy show and think they're watching Comedy Central.
Yeah,
like, you go, like in Houston, this little fucking douchey little white kid with his family was just being like, whatever. I go, you know what's weird, man? I mean, not that I'm threatening you, but you just there's nothing in you that says I'm a fucking big black dude that could slap this shit out of you.
So Kaplan picked this little article for me to read. Ebola becomes a global crisis, says Plan International. The charity Plan International says that the current outbreak of Ebola, and not Ebola, these nuts, is rapidly becoming a global crisis with almost 500 fatalities and at least 800 known cases. Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone are affected, but 8 other countries are on alert, and a U.S. citizen in Ghana has been tested. It was reported today. VOR's Tom Eckert spoke to head of disaster preparation at Plan International, Dr. Krasin. The outbreak of Ebola fever in West Africa is, by some accounts, the most serious of several years. 90% of those infected with the disease will die today. A senior government official in Ghana said that the U.S. citizens in the country are being tested for Ebola after visits to Ghana and Sierra Leone in the past few weeks. He asked if the fears in that the virus could spread to other countries. Dr. Kristen told VOR, there are 3 key things to note. There are 3 countries affected, has claimed more than 480 lives, and is no longer limited to small rural pockets to where people don't often travel outside much. Cases and deaths have been reported even in big towns. The disease is spread through any exchange of fluids between the carrier and new person, and incubation between 2 and 21 days, making it difficult for the virus to be detected. As people are moving from country to country, he points out that we are talking about countries with scant resources to tackle the issue, and we need much more coordinated global crisis. Isn't it an alarmist to call it a global health crisis? It's true that it hasn't left Africa in the past, he says, but there has never been a situation where multiple countries with this many numbers have been affected. So this should serve as a wake-up call so that we take precautionary measures to contain the outbreak. And I watched some scary movies as a kid, but the Outbreak, the movie with Hoffman there, scared the shit out of me. I remember when they're coughing in the movie theater and you could see the virus flying around. I ran out that motherfucker because I was scared. I was like 13. I don't give a fuck. That shit's scary, son. You bleed out of every orifices and then go out of both of these nuts. So yeah, So watch out for that shit. And right now we can laugh and say it's in another country, but we don't know. So stay golden. Open minds and empty one's eyes on the
issue
prize.
that has never been satisfactorily answered to me is if his main concern was what was happening inside the United States, then why did he take so much about what was happening with Russia, with China, with Iran, with Al-Qaeda?
Now, this is interesting because I have never heard anyone say this specifically. In fact, I've heard the opposite. I have heard the intelligence community say we don't actually know what he took.
Uncle Adam and Uncle
now
John
she
from the No
somehow
Agenda
has
Show.
this
You listen
knowledge
to the
that he
Golden
took
Show.
this
Limit
information on Russia
debate show.
and China and Iran and all our enemies. Al Qaeda. I had not heard this.
That's the part that most objective observers who might very well say, you know, he may have helped the debate on what our laws should be and how we should be thinking about this. But then what was he doing downloading all the rest of this stuff that could only help Chinese surveillance, Russian surveillance, Al-Qaeda, and their methods and communication? That's never been answered, and I don't know the answer to that.
I also don't think it's ever been exposed. This has not been released.
The message is clear.
Making it up.
I mean, what it did reveal was the huge extent of American surveillance globally. I mean, you've described the US as leaders in internet freedom. You've criticized China for attempting to hack into Google, even the Russians as well, having to leave your mobile phone on a plane because of their aggressive intelligence. And yet it's the US, more than anyone else, that's invested, what is it, $75 billion in the private companies that are helping the NSA in this global spying network. I mean, why is it that it's one rule for America, another for the rest of the world?
Well, as an American, because I honestly believe that our acquisition of information saves lives and protects not just the United States, but our friends and our allies. Right now,
saving lives everywhere.
You know very well here in the UK, we have a serious, credible threat about terrorists getting on airplanes, going to the United States, intending to blow them up.
Killing people.
That didn't happen by accident, that this is a credible threat. I mean, I think it would be shocking to most people if the United States stopped gathering information and we basically said, okay, everybody, you're on your own. We can't tell our allies in Asia what's happening. We can't share information with our allies in Europe. We're going to stop. Well, that's just not the way the real world works.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. Let me get back into my make-believe world here. This woman is an asshole.
She is blowing it.
Yes.
And we do have to have more restraints. And as I say, that debate is going on. And I think we're making some good changes at home. But when it comes to the information competition that exists in the West,
Joe Rogan Experience Club, Golden Debate Show,
be a different world in 2 years. No doubt about it. I mean, I think that we're seeing this now where people are starting to get paid in Bitcoin. Like who there was a story recently about someone getting paid in Bitcoin.
Well, John Fitch got paid in in Nautilus coin, which is an altcoin. So,
and he got paid in that for his last fight, right?
Yeah, Nautilus coin. He got paid, I think it was 20,000 Nautilus coin, and then some people contributed on top of that.
Wow.
And it ended up on NBC. Like this weekend's fight, he was wearing boxers that had their logo all over it. And that was done completely over the internet. I watched the deal go down on Twitter because he and Brian Kelly interacted publicly. And that's pretty cool because if you think about like what do we use money for? One of the things is sponsoring events. Like banks own stadiums.
Yeah,
that's going to change. It's going to be Bitcoin Stadium and Doggy Coin, whatever.
Is it Dogecoin or Doggy Coin?
I've tried both, and I get called out either way. I prefer to say Dogecoin because it sounds a little bit more sophisticated
than Doggy Coin.
Yeah.
What does it stand for?
It's an internet meme, that dog with the stupid face, the Shiba, whatever that breed is.
So famous.
Shiba Inu?
Yeah.
Is that a Shiba Inu?
Yeah, yeah, he's got the meme. You just put "so" in front of anything you want to say, basically. Like, so rich, so wow, such woe.
So that's where Dogecoin came from?
Yeah, it emerged as a novelty coin and then got so much transaction volume that some people started to take it seriously.
It's so strange when something like that happens, isn't it? It's like what makes a Bitcoin just take off, other than the great design? But what makes a Bitcoin? What makes a Dogecoin?
That's what's so exciting about it now
Potcoin?
is human psychology. Like, that's the reason why the $50
I don't think so. There's a
Scary
bunch of
faces,
talk about crash
$50
course
world
from
fighting.
YouTube.
Or this one,
Break it
a
down.
squashed frog, or tumbling poodles, a bleeding bat.
Yo,
Rorschach
Golden
wants
Show.
to know. He wanted to know. He's dead now. He believed that your answers, what you saw in the ink, said something about your personality. Rorschach was a Swiss psychoanalyst who, in his youth, was fascinated by the childhood game of making pictures out of ink blots, called klexography. As an adult, Rorschach was intrigued with Carl Jung's use of word association in attempts to access patients' unconscious minds. Jung would ask patients to say the first thing that came to mind when they saw words like dead or window or abuse, and Rorschach thought, why not do the same thing with amorphous blobs? So he'd show a patient a series of ink blots and record what they saw to determine how people projected their personal associations onto random shapes. Assuming there were important differences between those who saw dancing bunnies versus those who saw severed screaming heads, he drew conclusions about a patient's personality. And yeah, this was controversial. Some clinicians still do think that the Rorschach test can be a helpful diagnostic tool when used correctly and cautiously, but others remain critical of the test, calling them unscientific and unreliable. It's even been called the Dracula of psychological tests because no one has been able to drive a stake through its heart yet. So I guess this is the part where I apologize for the set design.
A lot of money off selling people anti-stress drugs to cure their ulcers. At least until an Australian scientist proved they were quite often caused by bacteria and were easily curable. Number 4, Chaos Cipher. Until the algorithm was recently released, no one could decode the cipher that author J.F. Byrne had published in his autobiography. Number 3, the Roanoke Colony. Nicknamed the Lost Colony when all the settlers in this North Carolina settlement suddenly disappeared, recent genetic advances have all but confirmed the idea that the population abandoned the settlement and was assimilated into local Indian tribes. Number 2, black bodies being unexplainable by classic physics. Classical physics predicts that an ideal black body in thermal equilibrium will emit an infinite amount of energy. This is not consistent with what actually happens in the real world. Enter quantum mechanics. And number 1, sailing stones. In case you're not familiar, there are rocks in various deserts around the world that seem to sail or move by themselves. After several experiments, it has all but been determined that a combination of ice and
untold numbers of citizens, and because of the crisis which is even now developing, this radio station will remain on the air day and night. This station and hundreds of other radio and TV stations throughout this part of the country are pooling their resources through an emergency network hookup to keep you informed of all developments.
The ghost and the darkness have come.
He's here. Thanks for listening to The Golden Show. All thoughts and opinions are solely that of the host, guests, and sources, and is only to keep free thought alive. Golden Show, earlymorningmob.com.
Yeah, what are you talking about? 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 All that talking like this, like that, all that in your hood. Golden shows, golden roads, strobe lights, laser lights. Look at my tonight, apple shit, one more, tone it up. No, he said, we're talking like this, talking like that, we're talking. Golden debate.
Golden debate on that. Like, comment, share, download. Get the word out.
We're talking hood, draw the line. MC better talk with big chat. You know we're coming out the best. Golden show, golden robes, golden boss.